Hi everybody and welcome along to this special episode of the Boots to Billing podcast. We are coming at you live from the golf bar at the premier event of the Graft and Grow Business Club, and we've brought with us Danny Lennon. Danny, how you doing?
Great to be here, guys. Thanks very much for the invite.
This is somebody Chris has been chasing for a while. I want to apologise up front for my voice. I've been just back my stag do. So shout out to the boys that were on my stag do. I promised them I'd give them a shout out. So thanks for looking after me for a few days. This one, you got to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, are you alright? Because that's the biggest crowd you've played in front of before.
Oh, come on, Chris. So I keep trying to tell him, Danny, being a professional goalie doesn't count. There's a little watching you're big with big cons, you're a goalie. Anyway, let's get back. Stop talking shite, I've told you. Right, so this episode is a wee bit different because we're at a business networking event tonight. We're not going into a full episode, but what we decided, myself and Chris were talking about this, and we decided to go out to our Instagram followers, let everybody know we had Danny coming on. And we've picked about 8 questions that we think we can get into about a half an hour window. So I think we'll do our best to see how it goes. So, Danny, let's fly right into it. What was the very first professional club you signed for?
Paddy, that would be at Hibs. So it was. So as a young boy, I trained with a few clubs, you know, Dundee, Hibs for maybe a year and a half, down to Arsenal, Luton and that kind of thing, on and off. Used to go down with Charlie Nicholas's young brother, Stephen. Right. So we did. So they were great experiences. But Hibs were always a club that, you know, were keen to get my signature.
Right.
But I enjoyed the experience of going, if you'd signed an S form at that particular time, it halted you for doing that. But then there come a point where, you know, Hibs were really, really pushing. And on the back of that, I was still at school. And round about the Christmas time, they offered me an apprenticeship. To go along with the S form. So that sort of cemented my decision there. And my dad, growing up as a young boy, he was a Hibs supporter. Although he then turned, he was. So it was a proud moment for him, so it was. So, and I always remember, I went in and signed on Christmas Eve. Right. So I did. And Christmas certainly came early for that time. I came out with about 7 boxes of, you know, Nike boots and it was always a business. So that
was the best thing, wasn't it, when you signed that?
I love that.
New boots and all.
You remember the Nikes, you know, with the big yellow Nike at the back and the training shoes with the Tempo Turf and all that at the bottom? Oh, it looked at business. So
win the lottery.
How were you picked up for these clubs then? Was just Glasgow area playing football?
Well, I always played, growing up in juvenile, with Whitburn Centre.
Right.
And I started off there for under 11s, under 12s, all the way up. And you know, John, you always remember the 2 coaches that made you fall in love with the game, eh? Johnny Fordyce and Bill McCabe. You know, still see Bill at Mass every Sunday, and he's looking well. So I always try to give the guys a shout out. And they took us all the way to under 15s, and we were successful. Scottish Cup, getting into Scottish Cups, competing with the Edinburgh sides, Tynecastle, Hutchie Vale, etc. So the 2 guys had had enough. You know, and they weren't going up to the final level. And at that stage, the Edinburgh team started to come, and I'd initially agreed. You remember the player Terry Wilson?
Aye.
So Terry was a Whitburn boy, and he'd get last for Tynecastle, would have signed with them. And I agreed. I said yes. But then I jumped ship when 1 or 2 of the boys for Whitburn were got asked to go to Hutchie Vale.
Who were your mates for?
So I did. So I went there, and we were the best footballing side, but we got into every single final. We won the league, so we did, and got into every single final and never won one. And Tiny beat us in every one of them. Apart from the Scottish Cup final, Polbeth United beat us in that one.
So we
beat Tiny in the semi-final of that one, right. So we did. But so these type of teams that were always in round about, and you know, I enjoyed I used to go through with Terry Wilson, who went down to Nottingham Forest at that time, and Old T. I still train with Old Terry in the gym at Whitburn every day.
Brilliant.
And young T, he's home in California now, and he used to pick us up and take us through, and we trained at, you know, Heriot Watt University.
Aye.
And they've still actually, although it's all done up, and it's the university and that now. They've still got the old stone wall round about it where we used to train, and it was the black blaze that you trained on. I loved it. Great experience.
Did you play much first in football at Hibs, Danny?
I did. I made my debut at just turned 18.
Right.
And, you know, thankfully I'd lost my dad quite early at 19, but my dad, he managed to see my debut. So he did.
That's bad.
And ironically enough, myself and Derek McInnes, we made our debut in the same game. Him for Morton.
I forgot to say
Him
that.
for Morton and me for Hibs.
Right.
And Andy Gorham actually scored a direct goal for a
You
goal
played
kick.
that game, I remember it.
That was my debut.
Did you? Aye.
Aye.
Half volley, I remember it, but aye.
What the rest
I
of
think it was 3-0 we won.
Aye. I
So it was.
remember that, aye.
And I remember, last game of the season coming away and then pop, next again week, big bonus.
You don't see any goalies. You don't see any goalies half volley.
No, you don't. They all drill them
Stop
and
passing in the deck now.
yeah,
You see,
sidewinder.
Andy Gorham was a legend at a half volley, wasn't he?
You do. You actually get goalkeepers now. They don't look that way first now, don't they? No, they look that way and that way to build out with a centre back that can't play.
Sometimes you can't beat a lunch up the park.
Especially for you.
Aye.
Right, what was our second question?
So
for the
next
fans?
one, Danny, was Partick Thistle. You're a Partick Thistle legend. You won
Yeah.
2 league titles there. The guy who was associated with there was John Lambie.
Yeah.
Now, have you got any stories around John Lambie?
John was absolutely fantastic. John, funny enough, was just lived up the lane from my mum and dad's house. So they did just up the. So when I used to go up the park and play, you always knew who John was. He was at Hibs at that time as a young coach.
Right.
Then he had his success at Hamilton and all the other clubs, Thistle, Brown. And I always remember going, and you would always look in his window and you'd always try and keep the ball up, see if they noticed you and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. But there was a few stories when I eventually did work with John. He said that he'd actually tried to come in for me for 3 times when I was at Hibs.
Right.
But I never get any word of that, so Alec Muller must have liked me after all. So when I did eventually go to Thistle, there was actually a swap deal with myself and Derek Ferguson.
Right.
I was up at Ross County at the time.
Right.
Wasn't settling in. So the 2 years swapped and I didn't look back. But John was incredible. And what I loved about John Lambie, God rest him, was his integrity. I think you always learn to every manager, some good, some bad, some different that you wouldn't touch, etc. But things you would take away. And I thought John's integrity and honesty. He was the one man that he could shoot you down in one sentence, but pick you back in that, pick you back up in the next one.
Respect.
Aye, and he was great. And he used to sit in there in his wee office, and if you went in and go and chat him, it was like when you opened it, it was like stars in your eyes tonight, Martin. The smoke, Columbo sitting behind the desk.
Don't get eyes
And
there,
I remember this one time going in, and there was this agent in, and he was with this big athletic looking black fella, so it was. And the boy looked very, very athletic, and the agent's trying to sell him to John, etc. And he says, John, he can do this, he can jump for fun, he's run. He says he's electric, so he is. And John went down, just below his desk, and he picks up this hairdryer, and he says, son, this is what you call electric. He says, can he score goal? Oh, he was a one-off, honestly.
I thought you get
brilliant.
characters
But
like
what
that,
about guys like, you check Charlie, you be Murray and that,
Aye.
how did he handle them? And any stories with them?
Listen.
They must have clashed
Oh,
a few.
listen.
There's
There's one that it would actually take up your full session, and it was free the Blackpool 7, so it was. So this one night we got down to Blackpool. He used to take us away down to Blackpool because the pigeon convention was on.
Yeah, that's right.
So this, I would go and he'd take us. This was us preparing for a Scottish Cup semi-final against Rangers the next again week. And I remember he always gave you a night out. So he did. He loved one himself. And I remember this one, say, 7 years, went back out the next again night. But we weren't told a curfew or anything like that, right? So we go all the way along to Yates's. And we then get told with these big transvestites, and what a night we had, right? What a great night it was, right?
Did you say
honestly, big handsome things they were. And we had this wee trialist, I can't mind his name. And we had the best game of cheeky that you could ever have, right?
Yeah.
So you should think, so we've got there and we're all out in Big Nal and Trigger, Scott McLean, Wee Murray. They're all there. And we're actually, somebody's went out, I think it's Mark McNally's went out and put somebody's exhaust, for the suit. So we're playing this cheeky, and the next minute, this wee boy's fate, and the full Yates's is getting involved in this. So anyway, we eventually get back to the hotel, and the next minute, the wee barman or the wee bar porter, it was all closed, but he was opening it up for us. Next minute, John comes down, raging. What have I told you, Pop? Sent us all to bed, fuming. Next again day, we had a kangaroo court, so we did. Oh, it was hilarious. So he's got his telescope, you know, that he used to analyse the pigeon shite in. You know, he would analyse that. So he's got all this evidence. And then we, Chico and Ricky, they were the two kit men, and they were absolutely priceless, these guys. So we're coming down for court. So we are, and we get marked in, and we had these white Fruit of the Bloom t-shirts, right? You know, the ones you get for £1 or £2. That's what we were wearing. So we wrote on these Free the Blackpool 7, right? And on the back of it, as you walked in, it would say, it wasn't me, and the next one would say, aye, it was, I saw you. So this kangaroo court's going in, and it's going nowhere. We're getting done big time. So we are. We Paul McGrillen, God rest him.
Brilliant guy.
And there was a sort of wee jail there, like, to shut off the bar. And that was the jail. And Paul was the jailer, but he was putting the knife into every single one of us. So it was, God rest him.
Good times,
Aye, they were great times. And we ended up getting fined £100 for their white t-shirts each.
Did you?
Unbelievable.
Great stories.
Brilliant. Next question is around Rafe Rovers.
Yeah.
I played with Rafe Rovers, Faddy. I don't know if you know that.
I don't know if the viewers have mentioned that at any point.
That once or twice.
Can I go with Rafe Rovers?
Gafford, but
were you in the back of me, Chris?
I was well behind you.
Well behind me,
Gafford.
Yeah.
So,
well behind.
So you're obviously Rafe Rovers legend as well. Won the League Cup, but most famously scored that famous goal over in the Olympic Stadium. It was at the time, wasn't it, against Bayern Munich? Talk us through that.
I said it was one of these surreal moments, you know, and a lot of people, my brother-in-law to this day, he goes on every time. Because what we'll say about Rafe Rovers, they are absolutely fantastic at milking icon, things like that. You know, there's Darren mentioned. There's Darren mentioned Bayern Munich and Rafe Rovers, and they say, should they be mentioned in the same sentence, really? Shouldn't it not? And it was just one of these surreal moments, you know, that has this actually happened? And every time my brother-in-law, he says, are you still going on about that? And I never ever bring it up, Chris. So listen, it was a very, it was a great moment. And as a wee boy, you always want to test yourself against the best players in the world. You know, Mateus, Klinsmann, Papan, Babal.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
The boys' jersey I've got, it's the wee boy Schwarzer, the Swiss international captain.
Did you just feel all right in that game? Or were you
you feel good. You actually, when you're playing against top players, you actually get more time than what you think.
What you think?
Aye, you do.
See the guys you've just mentioned, they're not just like good players, they're the greatest for all time.
Well, that's it. And we done ourselves okay that day, so we did. But people always say, is that your best goal that you've ever scored, or the most important goal? What I would say was, it was a nice moment, but I think the two goals that I scored against Akranas to get us into that position to draw Bayern Munich. I think they were important. In fact, here's a stat for you. I was actually top goal scorer in that cup competition that year. With Jordi Weah. They won it. 4 goals.
But to get into there, you beat, unfortunately, Celtic in the League Cup final.
That's right.
Penalties weren't mixed
penalties
but you missed out in the final because you were injured.
I missed out, I got just a week before the final. My young kid, wee Mark Bush, had caught me in training, and I broke my metatarsal, so I did. So it was a wee bit of, you know, it was a wee bit of heartbreaking stuff at the time for myself, disappointment. But Jimmy Nicholl was brilliant. You know, he made me feel a part of things, and I always felt that the European experience made up for it. You know, that
I was young, Danny, that was like my. Because Big Ali, I've told you, he's a pal of mine, he's my uncle's best mate. We were dead starstruck there like, during that time because he played against Celtic and beat them.
Listen, what a great
man in that final, was he not?
He was. I loved Big Ali Graham. He was a great. He wasn't a target player for me, Faddy. He had too much ability for that. You know, he had a beautiful touch. You know, and he allowed us midfielders to get up to him because he held it. So he did that. I really liked him. One of the stories Jimmy Nicholl tells about that moment in Munich. We couldn't get us off you know how you train the night before? We couldn't get us up the Olympic Stadium. You know, tango balls and all that, you know.
Brilliant.
Come on, 5 more minutes. It was like shit. You know, when you were wee, your man shouting you for your dinner.
I'm not coming in.
5 more minutes, Jimmy.
So, listen, I think I'm next. Oh, sorry, on you go.
But just a wee quick one before that. So Jimmy tells a story that, you know, he was walking into the Olympic Stadium down the tunnel and going down into the away dressing room, and he's walking down Michel Papin.
Oh, Jean-Pierre Papin.
Jean-Pierre Papin.
You should throw names in there.
Jean-Pierre Papin shouts down to Jimmy, and he goes, Nicole! You know what I mean? They'll clear out. And Jimmy says, he turned around and he's saying, Papa! He's brilliant at it. He's brilliant at it. That's amazing.
So there was a big amount of questions coming about St Mirren. Obviously, so there was a couple, but start with the League Cup final. That was what we got asked a lot about. How was that experience for you?
That's right up there. You know, I think in terms of the whole build-up to the final itself, you know, the full club sold it brilliantly with the community. And it was brilliant. We went out, you know, we got about there into all the schools, you know, kids. And there's no doubt in my mind what the club had done that. And Brian Colwell deserves a big shout out for the way that he went about his business at that particular time. There's no doubt in my mind that there's many St Mirren fans, you know, loyal St Mirren fans for that moment. So there was. So that was a big moment. One of the biggest things that stuck out for me was when our third goal went in. And I don't know what come over me, but I just turned round and didn't celebrate with, because you're away from your technical area, you're miles away from Hampden. I was only there myself. And I remember just turning round and watching our fans, you know, and you see the joy. And that is etched in my memory as if it happened yesterday. So it was a real surreal moment. So was it.
So that season, you ended up losing your job that season.
The following season, we won the cup in 2013.
So you feel as if you were half-side treated for that?
I do when I look at it now, because it's easy, you know, when you come out of a job or there's maybe chairman and directors still in at the club, they obviously think they're doing the right thing for the club. But that turned out to be wrong. I always felt that I was asked to do, I did what I was always asked to do, to make sure that they were dining at the top table, make sure that there was graduates coming through for the academy, John McGinn, Kenny McLean coming through.
There was so many questions about
you know, and I won a cup. We won the cup for the first time in the club's history. So what more are you wanting? And I can say this now, and that was on a diminishing budget every single year.
Budget's always
you know, so sometimes you get managers that are punching well above their weight, you know, in comparison to what managers are competing at the right end, the top end of the table with. So I poured my heart and soul into that job, and I even gave up my family for 4 years, you know, for that.
And the thing is, Gaffer, you mentioned John McGinn there, who's just picked up a European trophy last night.
Well, he's not.
You gave Kenny McLean his debut. You gave the two boys their debut at what, 17?
17.
But again, did you see, you must have seen something in them, but did you know they were going to be as
definitely
big a success as what
Kenny McLean was the first one that come over. So he was. Kenny was graceful, and he still is, very pleasing on the eye.
I think you thought of a story you told me about Kenny McLean's ball. Tell us that one in a minute.
And I always remember Kenny. But Kenny was, how do I put it? Sometimes when you bring graduates over for the academy, you bring them over to see how they're going to handle the situation. And Kenny was a real good player. But mentally, I didn't think that he wasn't quite there. You know, he was mixing. And you didn't mind them mixing with the likes of Stevie Thompson, your Gary Tales, but you've not done nothing at that level. So sometimes Kenny would go back, and then you watch to see how they would react in that environment with the younger boys, how they'd be disappointed, obviously, and then they would come back over. John McGinn, however, was the only one that ever came over and never went back. He was just so special in everything that he'd done.
Kids, right, and I came with my dad, and I went like, who's that? Because he was just bustling about. Now that run he does that.
You know, but not even just the fact of what he does on the pitch. See off the pitch, the way he handles himself. And I know that when he's still away with Scotland this day, down at Aston Villa, Austin McGee tells me, you know, he's still picking up cones, he's still taking out the balls and all that type of stuff. But
the Scotland team.
the two of them were, aye. Kenny should have played a lot more under me than what he did.
Yeah.
So he did. But I thought Kenny was more for his sell at that age. I didn't think Kenny started to go that way until Derek got a hold of him at Aberdeen.
Right.
And then I thought he went,
Matured him a bit.
aye, mature.
I tell his story about his mum coming into your office on a Monday morning.
Well, I want to roll about the floor, so.
I remember what he
You kidding on?
What age is it?
It maybe about 18 or something at the time. So Kenny, aye, so it was one of these ones, funny, you know, I got a phone call in the morning, Kenny's not coming in, right? What's happened? He's been in a car accident, right, on a Monday morning. So obviously you're concerned, is he okay? Etc. Phone up, bump. Did he go to all this type of stuff? But you know, sometimes you just get a gut feeling, that's no ringing true for me.
Aye.
So I had a friend who was in the police. So I got the name of where the road that the accident was apparently meant to be on. And I phoned my mate and I says, could you find out if there was a traffic accident on this road at such and such? And there wasn't.
Right.
There wasn't.
That's fake.
And what had basically happened, they'd get in a bit of trouble. Like we all did.
Aye.
You know,
Aye,
we all did. And I can understand maybe his mum and dad, you know, want to protect him or what was the consequences. But sometimes you've got to learn the lesson the hard way.
100%.
So you do. So they did try and cover him up, and that's where it all where it all come from.
She wasn't happy, was she?
She wasn't happy, you know. She wasn't happy, wasn't getting the game time.
Oh, she was shooting the ball.
Listen, just there was one mate that I thought was an amazing thing I didn't know. St Mirren Hall of Fame. That must be
Listen,
proud as hell about that.
Paddy, I've been very, very fortunate. You know, in all the clubs that I've played with, maybe apart from the Hibs, although I was there the longest, 7, 8, touching nearly 8 years. And looking at that, I should have got out of Hibs a few years earlier than what I did.
How many years
So
were you there?
8.
8. Oh,
So I was. And I still had 2-year contract to go, but, you know, at that time, I think the most consecutive games I started was 8 in a row, but you were competing against Brian Hamilton, Pat McGinley, you know, Michael O'Neill, Dan Jackson, these guys. So I needed to kickstart my own career. But anyway, what was that question again? I said, man, the Hall of Fame. So any club that I've been associated with and been, I must have done something right because I'm in the Hall of Fame in them all.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
So
Unbelievable.
you've obviously done
The homework.
something that, or you've left a wee bit of an impression at these clubs.
That's amazing.
The next one is around Clyde. We had a special time maybe at Clyde. Very
Seen that either.
Yeah.
do you know what that was? That's the best time I've had in my career.
Yeah.
I mean, as a player and as a coach.
Yeah.
And I actually bring that experience at Clyde into my business world as well.
No, you do
Because
talk about it.
what I talk about is, and you built this, right? I don't both woke up your ass, but you did build this. That everybody in the club was pushing in the right direction.
Aye.
And I look at Celtic, every club in the world now, and that's so vital for the players, the coaching team, the kitmen, the manager,
So John McLean won it,
the fans, the board of directors. And see, when we were at Clyde, everybody was in the right, on the same page and pushing in the right direction. And we ended up getting promotion. But I know that was special to me. Gaffer, was that?
Listen, that was right up there for me. You know, in terms of what our budget was, you know, that type of stuff, the things that we're up against. You know, in the 5 years, I went through 3 chairmen at Clyde. And you could see it starting to deteriorate after Norrie and David Dishon. But one of the things for me, Chris, in creating that atmosphere, and I felt in the 4 years at St Mirren, I had it there, particularly the first 3 years, was when I took over at Cowden Beef. Although I was full-time, that was a great learning curve for me because I wasn't just manager. I was general manager, I was groundsman.
You were the guy.
I done everything. So when I went to a bigger organisation like St Mirren, I had an appreciation of the work that everybody else done. And you try and bring that together and get them all. Because the wee lady that serves you the meal, and the wee lady that's getting the registration, that's just as important as what these guys are doing in the pit.
Gaffer, how good was Joe and Andy?
And then, you know, you talk about me, Andy and Joe. that was Ricky and Chico for me.
Aye.
You know, that's probably
Aye, so they're the glue that sticks.
they're the
everything
glue,
together.
and
they do all the fines and they do all that.
the new things that you needed to know, Faddy,
Aye.
and the new things that I didn't need to know.
Aye,
And I
aye.
think that's absolutely brilliant, the important things. But this man here, and wee Murray was brilliant, wasn't he?
Ah,
Murray would
character.
keep you going, and just in terms of great in the dressing room, he's one liner. I'll never forget the time.
Right,
Joe,
get sent off against Berwick.
oh, your belly slide. This was a comeback of comebacks. Was it 3-0 down?
2-0 down.
2-0 down.
Basically, getting into the last couple of
You
minutes.
weren't playing. You just get
I'm on the bench. I'm a goal coach.
Oh, it was funny.
What was it like?
But it was, and you can, you know,
They scored at 96 minutes.
you look at the emotion, you look at the emotion of the Celtic fans running on, and that was Chris.
That was Chris's belly.
Do you know what I done? But it was funny because all the players piled on at the corner flag, right?
Aye.
And I was doing my fittest at the time, right? And I thought, see if I belly flop on top of them, I'm going to wipe a couple of them out.
Even the
So what I
big-
done was,
big
what
mug.
I actually done was, I actually done a belly flop to the side of them.
You
And the ref ran over, right? And it was embarrassing enough, the ref ran over with a red card, they sent me off.
Oh.
And I jumped in with the Clyde fans and just started jumping. going,
brilliant. Here's a quick one, Faddy, with Murray.
Oh.
So we're leaving to go to Peterhead. So we are, right? So it's a 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning job. So we're getting on the coach. And Murray goes into his boot to get his bags and all that. And as he goes into the boot, he pulls out Versace wallpaper.
Yeah, what are you saying?
He says, when you think of my wallpaper, guys? He says, it's for my bedroom. He says, £80 a roll. So we're on the bus and he's going on about this wallpaper. Are you going to hang it? Aye, I'm good at all that kind of stuff. He says, if I take my time, I says, you can't muck that up, £80 a roll and all that. Al. I says, and what are you going to do? What are you going to do when you've got two, with the excess that you've got two? He says, I'm going to make a couple of suits. Oh, bro.
Oh, honestly, see me, Murray, he just be well and early.
Aye,
He ended up putting me in the set pieces because he could have sat.
oh, listen, aye, couldn't he?
Very some boy.
Aye, he's done, because I was at Clyde maybe 4 or 5 years before that, when Bomber was there, and then
Aye,
Cowboy
yeah.
stuff, and the full place was a mess.
But,
So
no,
no,
but,
promotion that day.
well, do you know what? We got promotion, right, and it does stick in my throat a wee bit. We should have won the league that season. I don't know
Aye,
if
we
you know,
should
but
have.
We were deducted 4 points.
Steph McCluskey was playing for you, wasn't he?
No,
Was
that
it?
was a season.
Aye, that's a good thing, Chris. There's another one,
But
you
we
know,
should
that
have won the league.
you tend to protect people, you know, but as players and staff, we get let down, didn't we? You know, we get deducted, was it 4 points?
There was an
4 or 5 points.
for somebody on the board and directors. And we were on we beat Peterhead.
We're in the driving seat.
Aye, we were got it. And do you know what? See the day we found out we lost the 4 points, I always remember it because we were on the bus on the way up to Elgin.
Elgin.
And see when we were halfway up to Elgin, we get the phone call to say we've been deducted 4 points. And do you know what? I swear to God, it was like somebody just let the
Yeah.
air out of the balloon. We get beat off that day off of Elgin. Like,
Yeah.
every day of the week we'd have beat Elgin.
Just
We see that,
deflated.
the boys.
But we used it after that,
Aye,
didn't we? And we kicked on. We kicked
We
on.
would
It
have
was-
won it if we didn't get that.
Aye.
Aye.
And then, as you can see it, you know, I thought the first 3 years was great.
Aye.
When you left, when you got
I
off,
don't like to say that.
when you started your
He
empire.
does not need his tyres pumped up at all.
Oh, great time. I loved it.
So
Absolutely.
was the last question on Airdrie?
Last one, well, Airdrie, you had a very short stint at Airdrie. I know there was a few things potentially going on there. It was out of your control, but what was your thoughts on your time at Airdrie?
Listen, I was obviously bitterly disappointed the way things ended prematurely at Airdrie. You know, but there's a lot of things that managers, I feel, you know, that you can't come out and say because you're always waiting for that next opportunity.
Aye.
But I think this is one of the moments where people have got to understand that, you know, when I was interviewed for the process, etc., and it's a great wee club. There's some great people work at that football club. You know, it's a great infrastructure. You've got a chairman that's piling his own money into it.
Yeah.
You know, and a lovely wee man. But when I was going through the interview process, he said that there a few hand grenades had to go in there, you know, it needed a shake-up, etc. And I certainly did do that when I went in because you know my standards, Chris. You know, I don't do anything half-hearted. So when you are doing that, and part of the deal was that I had to take the existing staff that was also there.
Right.
But, you know, I was prepared to do that. You know, I thought, get on board and etc. But when you start going in and you pinpoint one or two wee things out, they took it real personal because they were part of the process of everything.
Aye.
So within a week to 10 days, I knew these guys weren't coming with me in this journey.
It's hard.
And it was hard. And I started to, a couple of spats with, medical staff, sports science, etc. That type of thing. And it got difficult. And I think if you're going that way, you need a few results to go your way. And they weren't quite coming. Performances were decent. We weren't far away. And then my biggest disappointment at it was, I felt the chairman should have backed me at that particular time. But, I think, although I say a lovely man and there's great people work at that football club, I don't think he's a great judge of character and the people that he surrounds himself with.
But I'm no in anywhere experience that you've got, but I said this to you at the time, you need a manager, any manager at any level needs their own people around them.
Yeah.
And I think because, and this sounds really childish and sort of schoolyardish, but you need somebody that's going to have your back.
100%.
Yeah. And that's it. You need to trust the people you work with.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying anything against the people that were there, but they weren't your guys. They weren't, and we compare it to Clyde.
100%.
And everybody at Clyde was in your team.
Yeah,
and you
100%.
ran through that brick wall for
They've
you.
got your corner.
Aye.
Alan Moore and I, to be fair, Alan and I would disagree on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But if I'd went a particular way that he would always back you, just like yourself, Chris, you would always point that out. So I think the biggest learning curve for me and that whole process at Airdrie is that I would never go back in without my own people.
Yeah.
Why was
Definitely
I
not.
always used to say to my old boss all the time, in recruitment, I used to say to her, it's your train set, I'll tell you what I think. You don't want to surround yourself with arse lickers. You need people that are going
Definitely.
to challenge you.
Oh,
And whatever decision you make, it's your decision, you're the boss.
Yeah.
But you need people that are going to give you that truth sometimes so you can go, well, maybe I was out of order, or no, I'm right here.
And listen, we don't get every decision right. You've got to own it. And listen, looking back at that, is there certain things that I would maybe have done differently? Would I maybe have went as gung-ho,
Aye.
initially? Probably not. But at the same time, I wanted to hit the ground running. There was things that I identified right away where I felt the players' fitness levels could go
Aye.
up that way. So the season was already underway when I went under. So,
you're just against it for one goal.
yeah, definitely.
No, listen, I think we were harshly treated, but there you go. But that's football for you. What's the plans now, Danny? What you want?
Well, listen, what I'm doing, and listen, I've got a proper job at the minute. So I'm working with Brian Hamilton and Mary Hamilton. They own the company SGS Grass, the artificial pitches. They're actually building Dumbarton's new pitch, and we're doing one in Blantyre. So great wee family business, and I'm doing a wee bit of pitch audit, and I'm doing a wee bit of maintenance, a wee bit of everything. But in a strange way, I'm loving every single minute. A wee step in the morning, getting up there. So football, it's always going to be in you. If there's an opportunity comes across there, I would certainly love that opportunity. And whether that be a part-time level, that you can marry the best of both worlds.
Aye.
That would suit. But
brilliant. Listen, when you were at Clyde, you were 1,000,000%. You were a full-time manager at a part-time club.
Yeah.
And I just give my opinion, you're a full-time manager because your attention to detail is second to none. You're the best that I've ever worked with. So I just think...
Hey, McCuddle?
No, I don't. Honestly, I love this man. He's
I
so good
appreciate
at what
that.
he does. And I sometimes think football is a wee bit sort of what's in fashion at the time. A young boy can come in and get a manager's job. But there's a lot of guys with experience like Danny
I
think where you're at, thanks for that, Chris. I think where you're actually getting a lot in football now, that people will say that the game has changed dramatically. I don't think it has yet. Players fitter. As a sport, it's bombarded with sports science. You look at Martin O'Neill, got rid of the sports. Because these people are dictating to what you do.
Can he player?
And if you're telling a player that he's ran, 200 metres more than what he should have that week, I think you're putting negative doubts into that player's head. They've got to go through that. Your body's got to go through that lactic acid. It's got to go through that pain threshold.
There's a place for it, but you can't build on that decision.
Definitely. There's got to be a fuel for that. So there is.
So, listen, Danny, I think, I don't think I'm speaking for both of us here, but thank you for coming on tonight. This is an event that's different for us. There's a lot of people standing behind there. Obviously, it's a business event, but I'd love to have you back on. I think it'd be brilliant.
Brilliant. Listen,
See, honestly,
it'd be
your
great.
stories, characters like you in the game, there's so many of them needed nowadays. So if you get the time again,
I'd love that,
maybe bring
buddy.
Big Ali on them.
No, do that.
Gary Rovers reunion.
Charlie,
Do that. See, when you do that, though, I am going to make sure I'm going to get my shirt. I'm going to get them professionally ironed and steamed. So
see, I'll get asked it before. We're sitting at one of the tables at the Stag doing. I'm like talking about the podcast. Everybody I've brought in the podcast so far has been like strategically put in. Big Ali's like me. You're not in your podcast, shit. I'm like, I know he's my mate as well. Really sure I did. I love that. I think I'll get you in.
he's
Danny McBrown.
brilliant. We were actually up at a Rafe Rovers thing. They were celebrating 30 years, and Ali was there. Oh, he was bright. He had a few beers in him, right? So everybody's telling their story, and the fans were there. Somebody dropped. No, it was a book launch. Sorry, can't mind the name of the book, to be fair, but it was a big book launch, and all the boys are there celebrating with the fans, and it was great because they got to hear our journey, and we got to hear the fans' journey. So we did. So they then got you up onto a couch to speak. So we were up there, and Ali starts having a go at Jimmy for no starting him.
You're joking. Many year ago.
Oh, no.
30, 40 years ago.
30 years ago.
Basically, my graduate, Alan.
Brilliant.
Listen, thanks for all the rest of it. Look at it, I appreciate it.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Pleasure.